The 50 Harley-Davidsons thundered into the parking lot like rolling thunder announcing a storm. Inside the crowded McDonald's, 7-year-old Sarah flinched at the sound, her small body trembling beneath Marcus's iron grip on her arm. But what happened in the next 45 minutes would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The McDonald's on Highway 12 in Cedar Falls, Oklahoma, was never meant to witness miracles. It was just another fast food restaurant in a small American town, serving Big Macs and fries to tired travelers and local families every Saturday afternoon. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting their pale glow on worn tile floors and plastic booths filled with chattering customers. The smell of frying oil and coffee hung in the air, mixing with children laughing and cash registers beeping their endless rhythm. If this story touches your heart, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means everything to us and helps more people find these stories of hope and redemption. Sarah Mitchell stood in line, her small 7-year-old frame almost invisible among the adults around her. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her blue eyes stared at the dirty floor tiles as if counting them would somehow make time move faster. The pink shirt she wore had a small tear near the collar, and her jeans were faded from too many washes. But it was her arms that told the real story. Purple and yellow bruises bloomed beneath her sleeves like poisonous flowers, hidden from the world but burning with constant pain. Marcus stood beside her, his thick hand wrapped around her thin arm like a vice. He was 40 years old, with broad shoulders and a face that might have been handsome once, before cruelty carved permanent lines around his mouth and eyes. He wore a plaid shirt tucked into work jeans, looking like any ordinary stepfather taking his stepdaughter for a Saturday treat. But there was nothing ordinary about the way his fingers dug into Sarah's flesh, or the way his jaw clenched whenever she shifted her weight. "Stand still," he growled, his voice barely above a whisper, but sharp as broken glass. "You know what happens when you embarrass me in public." Sarah nodded without looking up. Yes, she knew. She knew all too well. 3 months of living with Marcus had taught her exactly what happened when she stepped out of line. Her mother, Linda, was working a double shift at the hospital today, completely unaware of what went on when she wasn't home. Sarah had tried to tell her once, just once, but Marcus had been standing right behind her mother's shoulder, his eyes promising pain if she said a word. So she had swallowed her truth like bitter medicine and learned to survive in silence. The line moved forward slowly. A mother in front of them struggled with 3 young children, all demanding different Happy Meal toys. An elderly couple studied the menu board with squinted eyes, debating whether to split a meal. Sarah watched them all with strange detachment, wondering what it felt like to be normal, to stand in line without fear, coursing through every vein. Then she heard it. A sound that made everyone in the restaurant pause and turn toward the windows. It started as a distant rumble, like thunder rolling across the Oklahoma plains. But this thunder didn't fade. It grew louder, closer, until the very windows began to vibrate in their frames. Through the glass, Sarah watched as motorcycle after motorcycle pulled into the parking lot, a seemingly endless stream of chrome and leather and roaring engines. 50 Harley-Davidsons, 50 men in black leather vests adorned with patches, 50 pairs of boots hitting the pavement as they dismounted and stretched road-weary muscles. The Hells Angels had arrived in Cedar Falls. Marcus's grip tightened painfully on Sarah's arm. "Great," he muttered. "Just what we need. Bunch of criminal bikers." But Sarah wasn't listening to Marcus anymore. Her eyes were fixed on the men filing through the door, watching them with a mixture of fear and fascination. They were big men, most of them, with beards and tattoos and leather that creaked when they walked. Other customers stepped aside nervously, mothers pulling children closer. The man who entered last was different somehow. He moved with quiet authority, and the others naturally created space around him. Jake Ironside Thompson was 45 years old, with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a short ponytail and a beard more grey than black. His leather vest bore patches of 30 years in the club, and his arms were covered in tattoos telling stories only his brothers understood. But it was his eyes that set him apart, pale blue and piercing, the eyes of a man who had seen too much and still chose to see more. Jake took his place at the end of the line, directly behind a nervous-looking man gripping a little blonde girl's arm. He noticed the man's white knuckles first, then the girl's downcast eyes, and finally the slight trembling of her small shoulders. Something cold settled in his stomach, a feeling he knew too well. "Pretty busy today," Jake said casually, just to see how they would react. Marcus turned his head slightly, his expression a mask of forced politeness over obvious contempt. But it was the girl's reaction that told Jake everything he needed to know. Jake watched the little girl's reaction carefully. At the sound of his voice, she had flinched, not the startled jump of a surprised child, but the instinctive cringe of someone expecting to be hit. He had seen that reaction before, more times than he wanted to remember. 20 years ago, before he joined the Angels, before the road became his home, Jake had been a different man. He had been a father. His daughter Emily had been 7 years old when she died. The same age, he realized with a jolt, as this trembling child before him. Emily had been taken by leukemia, slowly fading like a flower in frost, while Jake held her hand and begged God for a miracle that never came. After the funeral, his marriage crumbled. He found the motorcycle club, found brothers who understood loss without needing it explained. He had never forgotten Emily's face, her laugh, the way she would run to him after school with arms wide open. Now, standing in a crowded McDonald's, Jake couldn't look away from the bruises peeking out from under the girl's sleeve. They were the yellow-green of healing wounds, layered over fresher purple marks. A pattern, a history written in pain. "Hey there, little one," Jake said gently, crouching down slightly to be at eye level. "What's your name?" Sarah's blue eyes darted up to meet his, and in that moment something passed between them, a question, a plea. Then Marcus yanked her closer to his side. "She doesn't talk to strangers," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Mind your business." Jake straightened slowly, his gaze never leaving Marcus's face. "Just being friendly, friend. Nice day for a burger, isn't it?" Marcus turned away, without responding, pulling Sarah forward as the line moved. But Jake had seen enough. He had seen the fear in that child's eyes, the silent scream trapped behind pressed lips. He had seen the way she looked at him, not with normal wariness children showed around bikers, but with something deeper, desperate hope mixed with trained helplessness. Jake caught the eye of his sergeant-at-arms, a massive man named Derek Bear Williams, who stood a few places ahead in line. A subtle nod passed between them. A language of gestures developed over decades of brotherhood. Bear's eyes narrowed, and he began scanning the room with new purpose. The line continued moving. Marcus ordered curtly, a Big Mac meal for himself, a small fry and water for Sarah. Jake noticed that the child didn't ask for anything more, didn't beg for a toy or ice cream like most kids her age would. She stood motionless and silent, like a small ghost haunting the fluorescent aisles. As Marcus paid and grabbed the tray, Jake stepped forward to place his order, but his eyes followed the man and child as they wound through the crowded restaurant toward a booth in the corner, the most isolated spot, Jake noted, away from windows, away from other families, a predator's choice of territory. "What can I get you, sir?" the nervous teenager behind the counter asked. "Give me a minute," Jake said. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick message to the club's group chat. "Eyes on the corner booth. Man with little girl. Something wrong. Watch and wait." Within seconds, acknowledgements came back. The brothers were alert now, scattered throughout the restaurant, but focused on the same target. To anyone watching, they were just a motorcycle club grabbing lunch. But underneath the casual surface, 50 trained observers had locked onto Marcus and Sarah like wolves spotting a wounded deer. Jake ordered coffee and a burger he didn't intend to eat, then found a seat with a clear view of the corner booth. He watched Marcus tear into his food, while Sarah sat motionless, her small fry untouched. "Eat," Marcus commanded. "I didn't pay for that so you could waste it." Sarah picked up a single fry with trembling fingers and put it in her mouth, chewing mechanically. Her eyes stayed fixed on the table, as if salvation might be hidden somewhere in its scratched surface. Bear slid into the seat across from Jake, his massive frame making the plastic chair groan in protest. "What are we looking at, brother?" "Abuse," Jake said quietly. "Bad. She's got bruises up and down her arms, and she's scared, silent. Hasn't said a word since they walked in." Bear's expression darkened. Like most of the club, he had a particular hatred for those who hurt children. It was one of their unwritten codes. You didn't mess with kids, ever. Period. "What do you want to do?" Jake sipped his coffee, thinking. They couldn't just grab the girl. That would be kidnapping, and it would give the man grounds to play victim. They needed something more. They needed to catch him in the act, or get the girl to speak her truth. "We wait," Jake decided. "We watch. And we don't let them leave this building until we know exactly what we're dealing with." Bear nodded and moved to another table, positioning himself near the exit. Around the room, other brothers shifted casually, creating a net that Marcus didn't even know existed. The trap was set, and now they just needed to wait for the prey to reveal itself. In the corner booth, Sarah finally looked up from her untouched fries. Her eyes swept across the restaurant, taking in the leather-clad men scattered throughout. For the first time in months, something flickered in her chest, a tiny ember of hope that she had thought was dead forever. But then Marcus grabbed her wrist under the table, squeezing until tears sprang to her eyes. The pain was familiar, but that didn't make it hurt any less. Sarah bit her lip hard to keep from crying out, knowing that any sound would only make things worse later. Marcus had taught her well over the past 3 months. Silence was survival, and tears were weakness. "I saw you looking at those bikers," Marcus hissed, his face twisted into something ugly. "You thinking about asking them for help? You think anyone would believe a lying little girl over me? Your mother doesn't even believe you. No one will ever believe you. You're worthless." Sarah shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her cheeks. She wanted to scream that she hadn't done anything wrong, that she was just looking around like any normal person, but the words were trapped in her throat, frozen by months of careful conditioning. Across the room, Jake watched the exchange with growing fury. He couldn't hear what was being said, but he could read the body language clearly enough. The man was hurting that child right now, right here in public, confident that no one would notice or care. Jake's phone buzzed with a message from Ricky Torch Delgado, who sat 2 tables away from the booth. "He's got her wrist. She's crying. We moving?" Jake typed back, "Not yet. Need more. Get the manager involved." Within minutes, Torch had pulled aside the shift manager, a middle-aged woman named Patricia who looked deeply uncomfortable with 50 bikers in her restaurant. But when Torch quietly explained what they were seeing, her expression changed from annoyed to horrified. "That little girl?" Patricia whispered, peering toward the corner booth. "Oh my God, I thought something seemed off when they ordered. He was so cold with her, so controlling." "We need you to do something for us," Torch said. "Something small but important. Can you help?" Patricia nodded firmly, her maternal instincts overriding her nervousness about the bikers. 5 minutes later, Patricia approached the corner booth with a bright professional smile. "Hi there. We're doing a special promotion today for kids. Free ice cream sundae with any purchase. Would your daughter like one?" Marcus's face flickered with annoyance at the interruption. "She's not my daughter. She's my stepdaughter. And no, she doesn't need ice cream. She's perfectly fine." "Oh, are you sure?" Patricia persisted, turning her full attention to Sarah. "What about you, sweetie? We have chocolate and vanilla with sprinkles. Do you want one? It's completely free." It was a simple question, but it cracked something open in Sarah's chest. A stranger was being kind to her. A stranger was looking at her like she mattered, like her wishes counted for something. Sarah's voice came out rusty and small from disuse. She said no, Marcus interrupted sharply. "We're leaving right now." He stood abruptly, pulling Sarah up by her arm with enough force to make her stumble and nearly fall. But before they could take a single step, Jake was there. He had crossed the restaurant in seconds, moving with surprising speed for a man his size. Now he stood blocking their path to the exit, his blue eyes locked on Marcus's face with cold intensity. "That looked like it hurt," Jake said calmly. "The way you grabbed her just now. That looked like it really hurt her." Marcus's face flushed deep red. "This is none of your business. Get out of my way right now." "See, here's the thing." Jake's voice was conversational, almost friendly, but with steel underneath. "I've got about 50 brothers in this restaurant right now, and we all just watched you hurt that little girl. So I think it is our business. I think it became our business the moment you put your hands on a child." Sarah looked up at Jake with wide, astonished eyes. No one had ever stood up for her before. No one had ever called out what Marcus did in 3 long months. She felt something breaking loose inside her, a dam cracking under impossible pressure. Around the restaurant, the other angels had risen from their seats. They weren't advancing, not yet, but their presence was unmistakable. 50 large men in leather, all watching, all waiting, all ready. The other customers had fallen completely silent, sensing that something significant was unfolding before them. Marcus's confident facade cracked as he registered his situation. He was completely surrounded. There was no easy exit, no quick escape. But his pride wouldn't let him back down yet. "You've got no proof of anything," Marcus snarled. "I'm her stepfather. I have every legal right to—" "You have no right," Jake cut him off, his voice hardening to steel. "No one has the right to hurt a child. Ever." He looked down at Sarah, his expression softening into gentleness. "Sweetheart, you don't have to be scared anymore. These men and I are going to help you. You're safe now." Sarah's lip trembled violently. Everything Marcus had told her, that no one would believe her, that she would be taken somewhere worse, that she was worthless and deserved the pain, warred with the gentle promise in this stranger's eyes. And then she did something that changed everything forever. She spoke her truth. "He hits me," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible but carrying through the silent restaurant. "He hits me when Mommy's at work. He says if I tell anyone, he'll hurt Mommy too. He says he'll kill us both." The restaurant went absolutely still. Patricia, the manager, had tears streaming down her face. Several of the bikers clenched their fists, fighting the urge to dispense immediate justice right there. And Marcus's face went deathly pale as he realized his carefully constructed world of lies and control was crumbling around him. Jake knelt down to Sarah's level, his expression infinitely gentle. "You're the bravest little girl I've ever met. We're going to make sure he never hurts you or your mommy again. I promise you that on my life." He looked up at Bear, who already had his phone out. "Call the police, right now. Tell them we have a child abuse situation, and we're holding the suspect for them." But Marcus wasn't finished yet. His eyes darted around wildly, searching for any escape from the trap closing around him. And then he made the worst decision of his miserable life. Marcus lunged forward, trying to shove past Jake and make a break for the door. It was a desperate, foolish move. Before he could take 2 steps, 4 Hell's Angels had closed in around him like a living wall. Bear grabbed Marcus by the collar and slammed him back against the booth with enough force to rattle the windows. "Bad choice, friend," Bear growled, his massive hand pinning Marcus in place. "Real bad choice." Marcus struggled uselessly against Bear's iron grip, his face turning red with rage and fear. "You can't do this. This is assault. I'll have you all arrested." Jake stepped closer, his voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You're not going anywhere until the police arrive. And when they do, they're going to hear exactly what this little girl has to say. Every bruise, every threat, everything you've done to her in the dark when her mother wasn't watching." Sarah stood frozen, overwhelmed by everything happening around her. Patricia, the manager, had moved to her side, gently placing a protective arm around the child's trembling shoulders. For the first time in months, Sarah felt something she had almost forgotten existed: safety. "It's okay, sweetheart," Patricia whispered. "These men are going to help you. You're so brave." The other customers in the restaurant had formed a loose circle around the scene, many of them recording on their phones. A mother with 2 young children was openly crying. An elderly man in a veteran's cap stood with his arms crossed, nodding in grim approval at the biker's actions. Jake pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "Yes, I need police at the McDonald's on Highway 12 in Cedar Falls. We have a child abuse situation. The suspect is being detained by citizens. The child has visible injuries and has made statements about ongoing abuse. Please send officers immediately." He paused, listening. "Yes, we'll keep him here, thank you." Marcus had stopped struggling, but his eyes darted around like a cornered animal. "You don't understand," he said, his voice taking on a wheedling tone. "She's a difficult child. She lies all the time. Her mother knows she needs firm discipline. I never really hurt her, I just—" "Stop talking," Jake said flatly. "Every word you say is making this worse for yourself. And frankly, I don't want to hear your excuses. I've seen the bruises on that little girl's arms. I've seen the fear in her eyes. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of man you are." Torch approached Jake with his phone out. "Brother, I got Linda Mitchell's number from the girl's backpack. Emergency contact card. You want me to call her mother?" Jake nodded. "Do it. She needs to know what's happening, and she needs to hear it from us before she hears it from anyone else." While Torch stepped aside to make the call, Jake knelt down in front of Sarah again. The little girl looked at him with those big blue eyes, still wet with tears, but now holding something new, a flicker of hope that hadn't been there before. "Sarah, I know you're scared," Jake said softly, "but I want you to know that you did nothing wrong. None of this is your fault. What he did to you was wrong, and he's the one who's going to be in trouble, not you. Do you understand?" Sarah nodded slowly. He said no one would believe me. He said I was a liar. He was the liar, sweetheart, not you. And now everyone knows the truth." The police arrived within 8 minutes. 2 squad cars with lights flashing, pulling into the crowded parking lot. Officers Thompson and Rodriguez entered the restaurant with hands on their holsters, clearly tense about walking into a situation involving 50 Hell's Angels. But they quickly assessed the scene and relaxed slightly when they saw the bikers were calm and cooperative. "We got a call about a child abuse situation," Officer Thompson said, approaching Jake. "You the one who called it in?" Jake nodded and gestured toward Marcus, still pinned against the booth by Bear. "That man has been abusing his 7-year-old stepdaughter. She has bruises on her arms, and she told us he hits her when her mother is at work. He also threatened to hurt her mother if she told anyone." Officer Rodriguez moved toward Sarah, kneeling down with a gentle expression. "Hi there, sweetie. My name is Officer Maria. Can you tell me what happened?" Sarah looked at Jake, who gave her an encouraging nod. Then she took a deep breath and began to speak. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. She told them about the first time Marcus hit her, 2 weeks after he moved in. She told them about the bruises she had to hide, the lies she had to tell at school. She told them about the threats, the fear, the feeling that no one would ever help her. By the time she finished, Officer Rodriguez had tears in her eyes. She stood and walked over to Marcus with a hard expression. "Sir, you're under arrest for child abuse. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As Rodriguez recited the Miranda rights and cuffed Marcus's hands behind his back, the restaurant erupted in applause. The bikers, the customers, even the McDonald's employees, everyone was clapping and cheering. Marcus was led out to the squad car, with his head down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Jake felt a small hand slip into his. He looked down to see Sarah standing beside him, her face still tear-streaked, but somehow lighter than before. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "Always, little one, always." At that moment, a car screeched into the parking lot and a woman in nurse's scrubs came running toward the restaurant. Linda Mitchell burst through the doors, her eyes wild with panic, until they landed on her daughter. "Sarah! Oh my God, Sarah!" Linda fell to her knees and wrapped her arms around her daughter, sobbing. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Sarah hugged her mother back, crying too. "It's okay, Mommy. The motorcycle men saved me. They believed me when I told them." Linda looked up at Jake through her tears. "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you. I had no idea what he was doing. He seemed so nice at first, and Sarah never said anything, and It's not your fault either," Jake said. "Abusers are good at hiding what they are. The important thing is that Sarah is safe now, and he's never going to hurt her again." Linda nodded, clutching her daughter tighter. "I'm pressing charges, everything. I want him to pay for what he did to my baby." Officer Thompson approached with a card. "Ma'am, here's the information for victim services. They can help you and Sarah through this process. We'll need to take photos of her injuries and get a full statement, but that can wait until tomorrow. Tonight, just take your daughter home and let her know she's loved." As the police finished their work and the crowd began to disperse, Jake gathered his brothers outside. The 50 Hells Angels stood in the parking lot, the afternoon sun glinting off their chrome motorcycles, their faces reflecting the quiet satisfaction of justice done. "Brothers," Jake said, his voice carrying across the group, "today we reminded the world what we really stand for. Not crime, not chaos. We stand for protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That little girl in there will remember this day for the rest of her life. She'll remember that when no one else would help her, 50 men in leather showed up and believed her." Bear stepped forward. "For Emily," he said, knowing the name of Jake's daughter. Jake felt his throat tighten. "For Emily," he repeated, "and for every child like her." 3 months later, Jake received a letter at the clubhouse. The return address was Cedar Falls, Oklahoma. He opened it with curious hands and found a child's drawing inside, a picture of a little girl with yellow hair holding hands with a big man in a black vest. Above them, written in careful 7-year-old handwriting, were the words, "My hero." A note from Linda was attached. "Dear Jake and the Hells Angels, I wanted to update you on Sarah and let you know how much your actions that day changed our lives. Marcus pleaded guilty to child abuse charges and is serving 5 years in prison. Sarah has been in therapy and is doing so much better. She smiles again. She laughs again. She sleeps through the night without nightmares. But I also wanted to tell you something we discovered during the investigation, something that makes what you did even more important than you knew. Marcus had a history. Before he met me, before he came to Cedar Falls, he had been investigated for child abuse in 2 other states. Both times, the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. Both times, the children were too scared to speak. If you hadn't stopped him that day, if Sarah hadn't found the courage to tell you the truth, there's no telling how far he would have gone. The detective told me that abusers like Marcus often escalate over time. You didn't just save my daughter from bruises and fear. You may have saved her life. I also learned something about you, Jake. I learned about Emily, about what you lost, and why you do what you do. In a way, I feel like Emily was there that day too, guiding you to my daughter. I know that might sound strange, coming from someone you barely know, but I believe it with all my heart. Sarah talks about you all the time. She wants to be brave like you when she grows up. She says she wants to help other kids who are scared and alone. You gave her that. You gave her hope. We're doing well now. I got a promotion at the hospital, and we moved into a new apartment with no bad memories. Sarah started 2nd grade last month, and she made 3 new friends already. Life is good in a way I wasn't sure it could ever be again. Thank you doesn't seem like enough, but it's all I have. Thank you for being in the right place at the right time. Thank you for seeing what others missed. Thank you for believing a scared little girl when she needed it most. With eternal gratitude, Linda and Sarah Mitchell, P.S. Sarah made you that drawing herself. She spent 3 days on it. She said she wanted to make sure she got the motorcycle just right. Jake sat in his chair for a long time, staring at the drawing. The crayon strokes were wobbly, the proportions were off, and the motorcycle looked more like a blob than a Harley. But it was the most beautiful thing he had seen in 20 years. He thought about Emily, about the daughter he couldn't save, about all the years of guilt and grief that had followed him down endless highways. and he realized something that made his eyes blur with tears. He couldn't bring Emily back. He would carry that loss forever. But maybe, just maybe, her memory could live on in moments like this. In little girls saved from monsters, in small acts of courage that rippled outward into waves of healing. Bear walked in and saw Jake holding the letter. "What's that, brother?" Jake wiped his eyes and smiled. "Proof that we make a difference. That's what it is." He pinned Sarah's drawing to the wall of the clubhouse, right next to the photo of Emily that had hung there for 2 decades. Father and daughter, side by side. One lost, one saved. And somewhere in Cedar Falls, a 7-year-old girl fell asleep without fear, dreaming of motorcycles and heroes in leather who had taught her the most important lesson of all, that she mattered, that she was believed, and that she was loved. The road goes on forever, but some stops along the way change everything. For Jake, Sarah, and 50 brothers who chose to see what others ignored, that Saturday afternoon at a small-town McDonald's was one of those stops. A moment of courage, a child's whispered truth, a circle of leather and chrome that became a shield. That's what family really means.